At the height of the battle, the fury of the orcs split the emperor from his guards. Alone he slew hundreds of them until a blast from the orc plasma weapon weakened his defense, and one of the orc leaders seized him. The creature's strength was so great that it took hold of the emperor and buckled his golden armor. Welcome, future and current Warhammer scholars. This is a series where I, an ignorant noob, read lore, and today we're covering the Orks. I love Orks in every franchise, and back when I played Warhammer Dawn of War, the Orks were just so cool to me. So I'm hyped to get into this. I'm mainly just reading off of the wiki, but I did just order the character encyclopedia, so I'll contribute from that in future videos. If you guys have any book suggestions, let me know, but let's get started. The Orks, also called greenskins, are a savage, warlike, green-skinned species of bestial, asexual humanoids who are spread across the galaxy. They are unique among the intelligent Xenos species known to mankind. Xenos species known to mankind in that they possess the physiological features of both animals and fungi. Okay, so two different things there. The greenskins are asexual. Sucks, but at the same time, I couldn't picture a female orc. Ugh. They are unique among the intelligent Xenos species. What are Xenos species? I just thought that was another word for tyrannid. Xenos, pronounced Xenos or Xenos. Oh, I'm not going to remember that. Is a high Gothic term used by the people and adepta of the Imperium of Man that means stranger and alien. And orcs are they're animal and fungi, but it makes sense that they're green, I guess. They share many physical and cultural features with the dark fantasy Warhammer universe's orcs, and were initially called space orcs to distinguish them. Right, because war. Okay, I don't know if they're separate universes. I just know that Warhammer is much more medieval of a setting, whereas 40K is obviously 40,000 years in the future, or not 40,000 years in the future, but 40,000 AD. Um, Orcs are seen by their enemies, pretty much everywhere else in the universe, as primitive, barbaric, hyper-violent, and crude. That's why we love them. But they are the most successful and widespread intelligent species in the whole galaxy. Are you kidding me? The Orcs? Dang, dude, that's sick. Alright, outnumbering possibly every other intelligent star-facing species, even humanity. Don't we have like over 1 trillion people part of the Imperium, over 1 million colonized worlds? Crazy. With the very plausible exception of the Tyranids. Oh shit, okay. Yeah, the Tyranids are crazy. Tyranids seem crazy. Greenskins are one of the most dangerous alien races to plague the galaxy. Numerous beyond belief and driven always to fight and conquer, the orcs threaten every single intelligent species of the galaxy. Orcs are possibly the most warlike aliens in the 41st millennium, and their number is beyond counting. Amid constant, seething tides of battle and bloodshed, burgeoning orc stellar empires rise and fall. Mercifully, most are short lived, soon destroying themselves in a maelstrom of violence and internecine conflict. But should. What is internecine? Hold on, I gotta look this up. Mutually destructive. Okay. But should the orcs ever truly unify, they would crush all opposition. Okay, so orcs are just constantly fighting with each other if they don't have someone else to pick on. So they really need a common enemy, and as a human being, I respect that. Orcs generate a potent psychic gestalt field. I don't know how to say that word. Gestalt. Gestalt field that allows them to accomplish many feats of technological engineering that might otherwise seem impossible. That's alright, that's sick. Yeah, I always wondered how they got like massive cool machines when they all just seem stupid. And well, actually there are the ones with goggles. Those are the smart orcs. At the same time, the power of the psychic field is directly proportional to the number of greenskins present in a given location. The more orcs that gather, the more orcs are drawn to them. At the same time that the power and intelligence of the greenskins begin to grow with their numbers. Dang. Okay. And then they just all just destroy each other. That's all right. I really love the orc lore so far. The orcs' unquenchable thirst for battle has always proved their downfall historically. The orc tribes have spent much of their time fighting amongst themselves, waging brutal wars with only the strongest surviving. On occasion, an orc leader will emerge who is mighty enough to defeat his rivals and unite the warring tribes. Alright, so they need a strong leader. I gotta learn more with this character encyclopedia. Who are the main players for the orcs? Because they all look the same to me. Not, that sounded bad. Let's ignore that. His success draws other tribes to him, and soon a great WAAAGH is underway. Partly a migration, partly a holy war that can exterminate the populations of entire solar systems. Oh, when the orcs are on the rampage, the galaxy trembles, and in the age of the Dark Imperium, there are more WAAAGHs rising than ever before recorded. Awesome. Okay, so what is a WAAAGH? Because I've heard them scream that. I'm just picturing the cutscene from Dawn of War. That was sick, but okay. The WAAAGH is the name given by the orcs themselves to the massive military campaigns they periodically unleash on the galaxy, as part of their eternal desire to seek out combat and war. The term also applies to the key concepts of orc kultur. Kultur? Around Kultar, alright. Around which the entire Greenskin society, if it can be called that, revolves. Barbaric and savage, the greenskins spread across the galaxy like a viridian stain. They plague the battlefields of the 41st millennium in great numbers, overrunning any who stand before them in a torrent of bloodshed and usually mindless violence. In Ork is war on an apocalyptic scale. Okay, that's super cool. Just loving the orcs even more. Okay, moving on to the orcs' origins. The orcs are a biologically engineered species created more than 60 million Terran years ago as a warrior race, originally called the Krork, by the long vanished reptilian alien species known as the Old Ones, whom the orcs refer to as the Brain Boys. Whoa, this just got deep. All right. The ancient Krork were known. Krork? I don't want to say that. It just doesn't roll off the tongue very well. Were known to possess more advanced technology than that of the present greenskin race, and to be on average larger, in some cases standing as tall as 12 meters. Holy crap. Space Marines are like, what, 8 meters? 7 meters? Is that right? I don't know. I could be making that up, but I could be getting mixed uh, feet versus meters. But let's look a little bit at the old ones. Who are the old ones? The old ones were an ancient, technologically and psychically advanced intelligent species of cold-blooded reptilian beings. They established an interstellar empire across the Milky Way tens of millions of Terran years ago. The old ones ruled over the Milky Way before the development of most of the other sapient species in the galaxy. The old ones may have been the first species to attain self-awareness in the galaxy, and the first species to cross the Sea of Stars, making them also the first star-faring species in galactic history. Wow, these guys seem important, and they look horrific by depiction. Good lord. But this video isn't about the old ones. I'm sure I'll cover that later. Let's head back to the orcs or the Krork. The orcs were created by the Brain Boys to fight the Necrons and their Catan masters in the great interstellar conflict called the War in Heaven. that shattered the galactic civilization of the Old Ones that existed prior to the rise of the Eldari. Orcs are thus genetically engineered to be muscular, aggressive, and none too bright. Their technology is maintained by a caste of odd boys who possess genetically implanted dispositions and technical knowledge that grant them unusual skill with maintaining and developing technology. Wow, the odd boys. Okay, that's fascinating. I had no idea that it was like a separate, I don't know, almost like a separate species of orc. Okay. That makes sense though, because yeah, like the ordinary orcs, they would just destroy everything. Especially if a bolt didn't fit, they would just get pissed and just start smashing the machine. Okay, so who are the odd boys? An odd boy is an orc who is born with specific information programmed into his DNA that is released into his mind as he reaches maturity. Odd boys specialize in doing those tasks other than fighting that most other orcs cannot do, although a standard orc's genetically encoded knowledge allows him to at least keep his weapons in working order. Often there are competitions between individual odd boys to see who can make the most orky item, whether it is biological or technologically in nature. That is sick. Okay. Love me some odd boys. It seems like there are several other kind of species of orcs that they talk about here. I'm not going to go crazy in depth into them, maybe a separate video, but let me just cover a couple more. The abilities of orcs to build machines, practice medicines, or even use psychic powers are passed down through orc society on a primordial genetic level. No studies of the greenskins by the magi of the Adeptus Mechanicus or the scholars of the Inquisition's Ordo Xenos have ever successfully determined how this process works. Yet it seems likely that the knowledge is engineered into the genome of the orcs, perhaps a legacy left to them by their legendary brain boys. A mech boy knows how to create working vehicle engines and fusion power generators, even though he has never been taught to do so. And a pain boy instinctively knows which leaky tube connects to which wriggly bit when he is delving into some unfortunate patient's abdomen. Okay, Pain Boy is a doctor. I had no idea that the orcs had doctors. They don't even know what they're doing, they just know it. Alright. If asked where this knowledge comes from, an odd boy, if he replies at all, might say only that it was in his blood all along. However, he comes by his inherent knowledge. As an orc odd boy matures, it will start to make itself apparent, leading him to assume the role in orc society for which he is best suited. Should he lack any such specialist knowledge, the orc will happily join the vast throng of normal boys at the heart of each tribe and content himself with the simple pleasures of constant bloodshed. Okay, so they just love bloodshed regardless. That's pretty cool. And we got a whole list of different odd boys. There are several different types of odd boy collectively called odd boys. Some of these different types of odd boy include pain boys, which are the medics, mech boys, rune rune thirds, also known as slavers, weird boys, including warpheads, the orc psychers. Okay, I like that. Weird boys. All right, perfect. And then there are the pig dots, the herdus, the brew boys, the diggers, the sum boys, and the yellers. Okay, fascinating. Let's head back to the orcs. That's cool to see the subtypes, though. Indeed, the Brain Boys were apparently able to encode information on how to build simple machinery into the genomes of all orcs. Thus, Mech Boys require very little training in their function with Orc Kultar, since they understand mechanical principles at a fully instinctive level. Orcs lack individual psychic power, being denied such abilities by the Old Ones. However, they do have a sort of collaborative, collective psychic ability, meaning that if enough orcs believe something is true, then it will actually become so, brought into being in real space through the power of the Immaterium by their gestalt psychic ability. Dang, okay, so they're kind of like a hive mind, but they're a hive mind that when they gather, they get even stronger in psychic ability and they can just make whatever, but none of them are all too bright or creative, so they can't create like a new god, I guess. Well, they could. They could. They just couldn't do it purposefully, I imagine. Uh, for example, orc rockets painted yellow create bigger explosions. Wow, wow, okay. Simply because the vast majority of orcs believe they do. That is amazing. This is also why much of the orcs' seemingly ramshackle technology will do terrible damage in the hands of orcs, but will cease to function when used by other intelligent races. That is incredible. I'm just loving orcs. The further we go, and man, they have some super cool emblems too. Holy crap. Next, we are moving on to the Great Crusade, the Goro Hollowing. When the Emperor of Mankind revealed himself to humanity following the long night of the Age of Strife in the early 30th millennium, he shaped war-torn Terra into a single unified world for the first time in long millennia. Once he had conquered Terra, he looked to taking his great crusade to the stars. Having created the foundations of the Imperium of Man, he launched his massive armies out into the galaxy, seeking to bring all of human settled space back under the control of a unified stellar empire. During these early conquests, many imperial expeditionary fleets encountered the Greenskin Menace, a violent xenospecies designated as the Orks by the early Imperium. Within the Telan region was an Orc empire that rivaled the centered on Ulanar. That centered on Ulanar. Weird wording. And at its heart was the scrap world of Goro. The Orc Tech Castle. The Mech Boys dominated the Orcs of Goro and had made their world their own. The dominant tech caste on Goro seemed to be fascinated by a form of plasma technology never encountered before or since. Capable of generating destructive yields of terrifying potency, these plasma weapons had done so much to blunt the Great Crusade's advance across the Telan region. The Emperor decreed that Goro must be destroyed. That's super, super cool. I wonder if we got that technology, that plasma technology now. Is that what the plasma guns are? Were they originally kind of like Orcus technology? Let's keep going. When a 1,000-strong fleet of warships dropped out of the warp above Goro, it was the Emperor himself who gave the order to begin the assault. Horus, Primarch of the vaunted Luna Wolves Space Marine Legion, and ever the dutiful and favored son, stood at the Emperor's side and watched as tens of thousands of assault craft spread out from the fleet. Whoa, Horus, Primarch of the vaunted Luna Wolves? I've heard of the Horus heresy. I don't know what that is, but now I've just found out who Horus is and what he's up to. Okay. The Luna Wolves, teleported into the scrap layers beneath the planet's surface, forced the hollowed out Goro from within due to the planet's high resistance to orbital bombardment. In the vanguard was the Emperor, and by his side was Horus, and a guard of black armored Gestarian Terminators from the Luna Wolves Company, First Company, as well as the golden clad warriors of the Legio Custodes. As the Space Marines attacked, the Orc resistance they faced was near overwhelming. The Orcs of Goro were huge and augmented with scavenged bionics. Some stood taller than dreadnoughts, and their weaponry burned through Astartes' power armor easily. Whoa. Whoa, the Orcs just got real. At the height of the battle, the fury of the Orcs split the Emperor from his guards. Alone he slew hundreds of them until a blast from the Orc plasma weapon weakened his defense. and one of the orc leaders seized him. The creature's strength was so great that it took hold of the emperor and buckled his golden armor. As the creature's grasp closed to throttle the master of mankind, Horus stormed through the press of battle and cut the orc's arms from its body with a single blow. Together, father and son led their forces deeper into the vast sphere of scrap until they reached the center of Goro. The Emperor worked to collapse the self-sustaining plasma sphere that powered much of the world's scavenged orc technology and that contained a warp fold envelope so that Goro would implode into the warp. The Emperor proved successful, and without its power source, the scrap world collapsed in on itself. A hollow skin of rusted metal around an empty void was all that remained to mark the death of the great orc empire of Goro. Wow, that was a lot of information about the Emperor as well. I don't know anything about the Emperor. My last video I did, which was my you know, first video for this channel, was all about the Imperium of Man, and I learned about the Emperor, and I learned more about humanity, but it did not go into any battles or anything like that. That is crazy, because I pictured the Emperor as this basically immortal being that could not be stopped or even, the only thing that was in his way was distance. But even that, he had control of the warp and still does. So that doesn't even matter. I pictured him as a god, and for there to be orcs, I mean, they're the orcs leaders, so I guess they're basically the orc gods. But for the orc to threaten him with that much bodily harm, that's crazy. But at the same time, wow, Goro, I can only imagine how insane that world was. Super cool, though. Loving this. I think I'm gonna call it there, though. There are two other big battles, it looks like, that I could cover: the Ulanor Crusade and the War of the Beast. Yeah, it seems like those are pretty big battles. I might cover them in separate videos all on their own, but man, learning about the orcs was super cool. Asexual, crazy weirdos, gotta love them. Um, Man, and to learn that they're just a genetically created, like, animal fungi type thing. I'm curious how they actually reproduce. Like, do they just split like a cell? Anyways, love the orcs. Absolutely sweet lore. Let me know in the comments if there's anything else you want me to cover, but I'm probably going to move on to the Necrons or something like that for the next video. Catch you guys later.